This land is your land.
This land is my land.
If we come together and work together, we can pull the weeds that threaten to destroy our land. I hope and pray you understand. We cannot reap a good harvest with a bunch of bad seeds.
Sponsored by the Lancaster County Democratic Party. I'm Harvey Smith, and I'll be your host today. Yesterday, we lost an icon of justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Let's begin our time together today with a few moments of silence. Thank you. Today's listening session is centered around the questions the Hispanic community has for our elected officials. With us today are 4 candidates running for office as your representatives of the U.S. House of Representatives and the South Carolina State Government. Mo Brown is seeking the U.S. congressional seat in District 5. Ram Mammadov is running for South Carolina Senate in District 16. Keith Gray is seeking the South Carolina House seat for District 45. And Mandy Powers Murrell is seeking re-election for the South Carolina House in District 44. Good morning to all of you. We appreciate all who have sent us your questions. We'll do our best to answer as many of them as possible within our 1-hour time frame. Also, please feel free to type in your questions in the YouTube chat box. We will try to address those questions as time allows as well. Overall, the candidates are listening very closely to your concerns so that they can address them. To start, let's hear from each of our 4 candidates this morning. First, Mo Brown. Welcome, Mo.
Harvey, thank you for that, and good morning again. Ron, Keith, and Mandy, enjoyed the town hall just a second ago with you on African American issues. Look forward to having this conversation around Hispanic issues as well. I'm Mo Brown, and I'm running for Congress here in the 5th District against Ralph Norman. And, it was an easy decision for me to get into this race. I saw my country getting ripped apart by a lack of leadership, in my opinion. And in my whole life, I've been gifted enough to have great leaders in my life to instill the characteristics that I believe is necessary to lead folks. And so in this situation where I saw a deficit of leadership, I made a decision late January to get into the race and run for Congress. We have crises all around us. And even prior to that, we were still having a deficit of leadership. So right now we need clear thought. We need folks who's dedicated to solutions to alleviate the issues that we have, and then provide opportunities for all of South Carolinians and all Americans, for all that matters, to ensure that we will be a viable country as we move past COVID and all the other crises that we have. So that's what this campaign is all about. It's about the people. It's about getting to work and providing solutions and ensure that we will be able to move past our current challenges and run to the fight and meet them. So I look forward to this conversation today. Thank you. Go to my website, moforcongress.com. You can find more information about me, and we'll go from there. Thanks, Harvey.
Thank you, Mo. Let's now hear from Ram Mammadov. Good morning, Ram.
Good morning, Harvey. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here. Good morning, my fellow Democrats. Good afternoon, my dear neighbors. My name is Ram Mammadov, South Carolina State Senate candidate. I am a resident of Indian Land, Lancaster County. Why am I in this race? Well, over 25 years of failure of our leadership in our state, predominantly occupied by single party, Republican Party, left me no choice when I look at this state, of our great state, and when I see that there's more on the line this year's election, for example, our health in COVID-19 plans, highway safety or education of our children, underpaid teachers, lack of rural internet access, voter suppression, race inequality, the murder of women by men, opioid crisis, poverty, closure of rural hospitals, and so many more. I can go on and on and on. But the main question here is, are you okay with that? Because I'm not okay with that, not at all. South Carolina, as I said, in the bottom 10 in so many categories, and South Carolina could move up from the bottom 10 to the top 10 if we do it together. So rather than saying change, I have committed myself to helping us all do better, live better, and better enjoy our freedoms. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram. Now let's hear this morning from Keith Gray. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity to address my fellow citizens, and particularly the Hispanic community. My name's Keith Gray. I'm running for House District 45. I live in downtown Lancaster, in the center of the county. And I want to represent our citizens and address so many issues, as Raman pointed out, that have been the result of neglect and outright ignoring the problems. We can do better. We will do better. We will take a progressive approach to finely tuned solutions to address root causes. Taking care of something before it becomes a problem is so less expensive and so more effective than trying to patch it up with some solution that's so-called solutions generally designed to profit someone. There are things that our government can take care of and take care of the citizens. So please join with us in this quest to turn things around in our beloved state and our beloved county. Join all of these Democrats who are trying to clean up the mess again from the other side. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. And now let's hear from Mandy Powers Durrell. Mandy.
Thank you, Harvey. And it is such an honor to be here with you today. And it's such a pleasure to be on this panel with Keith and Ram and Mo. I always enjoy when we can be together and it's even virtually as we are today. I'm Mandy Powers Norrell. I grew up in Lancaster, and my family's been from Lancaster for many generations. Lancaster County is becoming a much more popular destination now, and so we have the influx of new people who bring new ideas to our county, and and see the entire place in a new light, and that's exciting too. I'm very excited about all of the things that are going on in this county that I've called home for. My family has called home for 11 generations. I have, I've been serving in the South Carolina legislature for the past 8 years. Before that, I ran for Senate for the seat that Ram is running for against Mick Mulvaney, and that's really what got me into politics in the first place. For the past 8 years, though, serving in the House, I've learned a lot of things about the other parts of the state and how we are viewed as Lancastrians, and how that is often misunderstood. I think that some of my biggest goals in legislation has really been to take care of the people who are traditionally disenfranchised, the most vulnerable among us. One of the first bills I got through the very first bill that I got through my freshman year was Aaron's Law, which teaches teaches children how to recognize and report child sexual abuse at every single grade level. Because especially if you think about younger kids, they are, what happens in their home is what they consider normal. And so they don't even know that the abuse that they might be suffering is something that even should be reported. Teachers and guidance counselors have always been mandated reporters to DSS, but we had a disconnect because the children didn't know that. That law, I'm very proud to say, has gotten so many predators out of children's lives across South Carolina. And I'm very, if I do nothing else in legislation, I will forever be the most proud of Erin's Law. This past year, we got past something I've been fighting for many years, and that was the end to child marriage in South Carolina. Up until this year, a child could be signed over into marriage, a girl child, by her parents at any age, so long as she was pregnant. And that ended up covering up a lot of child sexual abuse, because older men who impregnated younger girls were able to marry them and not be charged. So those are just a couple of things that I work on, that I try to focus on in the South Carolina legislature. There are very many more, and but it's always with a focus on taking care of people who are among our most vulnerable and traditionally disenfranchised in government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Our first question this morning is for all four candidates, Mo, Ram, Keith, and Mandy. What are you planning to do so that you could be helping our economic opportunities for the Hispanic community? For example, situations like loans for small and small businesses. And let's begin with Mo.
Thanks, Harvey, for that question. As you know, the Hispanic community is one of the largest growing labor markets today, accounting for 80% of the growth of the labor participation from 2010 to 2017. And currently 25% of our youth in America is of Hispanic descent. So it is essential that we're focusing on maximizing their invaluable contributions to our economy. First, we must ensure that the federal government allocated resources such as the payroll protection program is getting to the companies and small businesses that we have here in South Carolina. We know that South Carolina ranks at the bottom, close to the bottom of the amount of PPP loans that has been received in response to COVID. That is not good. We got to ensure that the guidelines, that people understand them very clearly, know how they can go and actually get those funds to help save the small business that we currently do have. We need to ensure that the loans that are being provided or have more forgiveness to them, so that don't actually pay it back if they stay viable. So we got to make sure that happens right now, and also ensure that there's multiple languages that it comes, particularly Spanish, to help our Hispanic folks who may not speak English that well, know that they have the resources that they can go get these loans that's available right now as we go through the COVID crisis. Small business is the backbone of this country. As well as micro business, which is a nuanced definition there. It's basically companies that's bringing in less than $50,000 of their revenue. But those are your cosmetologists. Those are your people who are performing cleaning services and things of that nature. So we need to make sure that from a government standpoint that we are backing those loans when companies are looking to create individuals are looking to create small businesses and micro businesses. Those loans backed by the federal government allows the banks to go ahead and get these companies started. It will invigorate the communities that we currently already have, given that we've seen in the minority community that there are estimates that up to 50% of all small businesses may not come back because of COVID. And so we got to address this right now. We have to be serious about that, because if we don't, our communities are going to suffer, and they are suffering already. So going to Congress, I will have a keen focus on ensuring that we're taking care of small business and micro businesses, so that we can get our communities up and running and moving forward in the direction that they need to. That also comes with planning with the communities at large. We talked about this on the other town hall that we had. each community must have a vision, see the issues that we have currently right now and start planning to mitigate those, to eliminate those, and create new opportunities as we move forward. So from infrastructure to healthcare to education, et cetera, all these things we got to be keenly focused on to ensuring that we get more businesses open and keep business open that's already in place right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Ron, will you share your thoughts on helping the economic opportunities for our Hispanic communities, small businesses and micro businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Robert. Buenos días. Bienvenida a nuestra reunión. I'm glad to be a part of this town hall. As you can say from my accent, I'm not originally from around here. My American life and my journey to achieving the American dream started over 20 years ago back in Michigan, when I myself, a member of minority group, as you can see, again, as you can say from my accent. So I know what it is exactly to be growing up as a part of the minority group, to struggle, trying to make it through. So my intention, and if it wasn't for COVID-19, I would be knocking on the doors. But however, my intention is to get acquainted and walk around the Spanish communities in our district, in Lancaster. My intention is to, as Harvey mentioned at the beginning, is to listen, to be approachable and educatable on all the issues that our communities are facing today. We had a great opportunity some time ago, almost a month ago, Keith and I, when we had our first meeting with Spanish community, leaders of the Spanish community, where that was the first time we could listen to the real issues coming from the real community itself. So my intention is to work with the communities very closely, to attend the schools, go to the schools where your kids are attending, to see the poverty level, so we can take that, I can take that issue to the Columbia to address it right there. So that's gonna be a very ongoing process between now and even after the election. To take your problems, to take your pain, to take your struggle, and hear from you, listen, to hear from you, what do you see the solution to your problem? What is it that I can do as your representative, as your state senator? What is it that I can do for you on a state level to address those issues on a state level? So I intend to work with the heads of the communities to see what is it that I can help with on economic level, on education level, on the community level, all the issues to be addressed on a state level. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Keith, will you share with us from your perspective around this issue?
Thank you. As far as addressing the issues of our Hispanic community, our African American community, these are very often with the startups an issue of financing, and having local community institutions are very important. Institutions that are physically accessible. I could definitely see where we need to explore the concept of having financial institution part of our postal service. We need to help with what Mo was talking about, with making sure the knowledge is out there, is communicated to the communities, and that there's forms in Spanish, and there's people available to facilitate people getting these opportunities for their businesses. We need to have a lot more emphasis on helping the small business, period. We need to do more with unnecessary regulation of small businesses. It seems like we over-regulate the small mom and pops and the startups, and we let the big companies, corporations, get away with, in some cases, literally murder. So if we can do reasonable regulation and increased opportunities for financing, then it's been proven and documented that it's small business startups where most all the job creation goes. It's with the big corporations where the big layoffs come from when there's a downturn. It seems the small businesses, except for like right now, where we have this once in a century pandemic going on, it seems the small businesses are more resilient. But if you shut down the business, which has unfortunately been the case with the pandemic, everyone has a hard time. But it sure seems like the big corporations have been helped out a lot faster with fewer rules. So we need to reach out to the community. We need to make sure they have the assistance to get a little simple business training, a little bit of simple, small scale financing. Very important thing is being realistic. As Mo said, businesses do fail at a high rate, but in most cases, it's not from a lack of trying. It's just a number of things. So I do believe we can do a lot more for people who want to start to live that part of the American dream that is, in many cases, having your own small business. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. And Mandy, will you share your view on this topic?
Yes, thank you, Harvey. You know, I think too often in our country and definitely worldwide that opportunity is a function of heredity, and it should not be that way. You know, people who are born into privilege pass that privilege on to their children. It's so much easier, for example, for someone who is born into privilege to start their own business and to be successful at that business because they have access to capital, and not just capital, but they have access to people and to folks who will help them succeed along the way. And part of government's job is to help even that playing field, especially in America. You know, we're supposed to be the exception where no matter who you are or where you come from, you can do anything. And so we have an obligation to even the playing field for the people who want to work hard and succeed. And there are many ways that we do that and many ways that work and many ways that don't work. And some ways actually work for some people and not for others. I'll give you an example. In South Carolina, we have lottery tuition scholarships. And we have the Palmetto Fellows Scholarship, the Life Scholarship, and the Hope Scholarship. And those are available for U.S. citizens who graduate high school with, depends on, you know, what their grades are as to which scholarship they're able to access for their, their secondary education. I actually, in my first or second term as a lawmaker, heard from a U.S. citizen, Hispanic young man, who was denied his lottery tuition scholarship. He had graduated near the top of his class in Lancaster High School. He was a U.S. citizen. He had a voter registration card and a driver's license and all of these things, but his father was undocumented, and his father was only able to get a driver's license in the state of Washington. But so because his father's driver's license said Washington, even though this young man was born in Lancaster and had gone all through school from elementary through high school in Lancaster, they said, well, you're not a resident of South Carolina because your father is not a resident of South Carolina. So we had to fight that at the highest levels of government. And ultimately, you know what they told me? We'll make an exception for him because you got involved, Mandy. And that is unfair and that is wrong. And I went to the guidance counselor at the school and I said, you tell every student who has this situation to come to me because they're going to make an exception for every one of them until they make an exception for all of them. And that is just an example of where the playing field is not even, and we've got to even it out. Another is the question was about grants for micro businesses, for example, and small businesses. Those are in state government. They're provided for at a level where they're administered by a state agency called the Minority Affairs Commission. The Minority Affairs Commission is overseen by state government. The board is, or the executive director is appointed by the governor. And up until a few years ago, it had generally no oversight from the executive branch or from the legislative branch. The Minority Affairs Commission was audited by my subcommittee in legislative oversight, and we found out that there were severe deficiencies where this commission was not serving the African American population, the Hispanic population, and especially the Native American population. We restructured this agency. We got the director to resign and be replaced. And now we are we're seeing some changes in the Minority Affairs Commission. And so that's a very important change in state government that was needed for probably the past 15 years and had not been accomplished until our subcommittee of legislative oversight took it on and started making those changes.
Harvey, can I add one more thing too on the federal level? Just when it comes to small businesses and their ability to get started, a lot of that is ran through the General Service Administration. And if you go there, you can go to the small business and then minority businesses. And the federal government has contracts that is specifically allocated for minority participation to be in. And so, again, from a leadership standpoint, and as we go from the top all the way down to the bottom, communicating that to all the folks out here that there is money if you can help start a business to go out there from a federal standpoint that will allow you to grow as a company, start on a very low level, taking on $10,000 contracts to $50,000 contract. And as you learn the bunding system and grow your company, you can take on bigger contracts. As we go to if I get elected to the federal level, I will make sure that we're emphasizing these point to all the individuals throughout the 5th district, knowing that they can go a route that's going to be backed by federal contracts that's going to allow them to start businesses and, again, be more healthy and successful in this district.
Thank you, Mo, and thank you very much, Mandy, for both of your insights around this issue and all. Our next question is for all 4 candidates. Going forward, will there be more inconvenient COVID testing available in South Carolina? At what cost? And does this testing just apply to US citizens? And do we have a vision around the estimated cost that this would be per person? And Mandy, let's begin with you.
Thank you, Harvey. Actually, testing nationwide is going down, but testing in South Carolina is increasing. South Carolina has been able to increase its availability for testing by 40% in recent weeks. And between now and October 31st, we have over 600 sites available for testing in South Carolina. If you're in Lancaster County and you want to get tested tomorrow, you can go to 103 Duncan Street in Heath Springs and be tested at a DHEC authorized site. The cost for DHEC sites testing is $0. You pay nothing, you drive up, you get tested. I've visited these sites. They're administered by the National Guard and the local hospital system. And if you go through your physician, it will cost whatever your physician charges, but there are many, many free sites for COVID testing. And you can find those by going to the DHEC website and looking at all the sites available. And then if it's designated as a DHEC site, then it's going to be a free test. And they do not ask citizenship status when they do the testing. You come through, you give them your contact information so that you can get your result, but that's all that they ask for. And it's, again, free if you're going to a DHEC site. If you go through your own physician or a private entity, you're going to pay what they charge.
Thank you, Mandy. Keith, will you share your thoughts on this topic?
Well, it's encouraging to know that we have pop-up testing going on. We do have the DHEC sites. I think, again, the response of our healthcare system in this pandemic has been badly handicapped by the for-profit aspect. We need to make sure that we expand and build a more equitable and more accessible and more affordable healthcare system. It's good to be reassured that the Hispanic population is not going to be automatically asked, are they citizens? Do they have papers? It's never should ever be a question for healthcare or education or quite a few other things. I think Mandy did a great job answering that, and on our local level. And I'd like to, again, this goes back, in order to have more availability and to have these critical issues addressed in our population for the protection of all of our citizens, that we need to at state level be pushing for the expansion of Medicaid and move on from there. We need more facilities out there where people can quickly get tested for, in these situations particularly. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Ron, will you give us your perspective on this topic as well?
Absolutely. Thank you, Harvey. First of all, the testing should have been provided from day one. It is the failure on the national level, and our leadership in our state is no better. They failed us. It is unbelievable how the response was from day one. So the testing facility should have been provided from day one, and it should be provided right now. And Mandy gave really good statistics on where we are right now. However, when it comes to the cost, there shouldn't be any cost for that. It should be zero, as Mandy pointed out. It's zero to be tested, to know like if you have a COVID or not. So first of all. Second, asking anybody for citizenship, it is unconstitutional. It is completely unacceptable. I should be treated as a human being, not because of my skin color or my religion or my nationality or my papers, whether I'm a citizen or non-citizen. I'm a human being, first of all, right? So any person should be provided with testing regardless, and nobody should be asked whether that person is legal or illegal in the country. That's completely irrelevant in this case. And I'm hoping that nobody's encountering that kind of issue. So that should be done. The testing should be done regardless. No payment should be there. That's it.
Thank you, Ron. Mo, will you add your voice to this topic?
Absolutely, I'm happy to, and I think it's essential that we do. To Rom's initial point, this has been a failure on the national level. Dealing with this health crisis that is COVID-19 required a national response. The visible enemy, as the current president has called it, is exactly that. And we had a game plan to deal with this, and he threw it out. And then with that, even his own CDC had given him the correct guidelines to keep everybody safe. And the main portion of that being testing, more testing. It's very simple. The more you test, the more you know where the virus is. The more you know what the virus is, the more you can isolate the virus. The more you isolate the virus, the more you can eliminate the virus. Testing is our greatest weapon to get past this virus, along with wearing masks. And so if we had the adequate testing on the front end, we wouldn't be 6 months, 7 months into this pandemic with shut down schools, folks losing their jobs. And I just got a notification that we have cleared the 200,000 deaths in the United States of America. That is 200,000 dead Americans. It's wholly unacceptable. Wholly unacceptable. And it's quite personal to me. I lost my grandma to COVID. She fought for 17 days with the virus before she finally passed. So it's a very serious thing. And so it is a direct failure on a national level that we do not have adequate testing, rapid testing, not testing that you get and it takes 2 or 3 days to get back. I'm talking about in the 5 to 10 minutes that you know if you have that virus or not. And so as we was taking these students going back into these classrooms, as teachers are going back into these classrooms, administrators going back into these classrooms, rapid testing will let us know if a child was going in there with a COVID virus or not. And so we could keep everyone safe. So it is completely unacceptable that our testing is not up to par at this point in time. The president had the ability to usher in the Defense Production Act, to engage our private companies to step up to this task, to make sure that we had all PPE equipment available. So he failed in that aspect too, and we still failing. Don't have a plan, and it's not engaged in the way it should be. So to answer that question specifically, testing should be free. It should be free. It should be free, and it doesn't matter who wants a test, because it's for the betterment of everyone, to ensure that we know what the virus is, so we can isolate it, to eliminate it, and then we can get back to life as we knew it, but then grow it as we move forward into the next iteration of this. So let's get it done. We got to keep our foot on the paddle. The federal government and Congress needs to pass this HEROES Act so we get more funding to everyone at this point. And I'm gonna stop before I start getting too angry and go to the next question. So thanks, Harvey.
If I may add, Harvey, to Mo's point, I'm watching that on a daily basis, and because of failed leadership, not only on the national level, but in our state, we have over 3,100 COVID-19 related deaths. And as Mo pointed out, and my condolences, Mo, I expressed that to you before, Mo lost his loved one, his grandma, because of COVID-19. So it is the failure. That's the indication of the failure of our leadership. We have no plan. Everything opened up, schools opened up, restaurants opened up. Everything opened up too early with no plan whatsoever. So we will have to, it is our job, our responsibilities now to come up with a plan, to work together with the communities, with the healthcare professionals, and listen to the science. Listen to the science, not to ignore it, not to think that you are above the law or you are above the science or you know everything. Absolutely not. When it comes to that time, you have to listen to the professionals and listen to their advice, listen to their guidance. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, each of you, for your passion, and rightfully so, around this topic. Our next question is also for all four candidates. What are your plans to ensure that medical establishments are able to communicate with people whose first language is not English? And are there any guidelines relating to forms and other important documents, etc.? And let's begin with Ram this time.
With me. All right. Sounds good. Well, that's a really great question. And as I indicated at the beginning, you can hear from my accent, I'm not originally from around here. So not to brag, but I speak over 5 languages, and Spanish actually is one of them. I used to be pretty good with Spanish, but any language needs a practice. I still speak Spanish, intermediate, but still speak Spanish. I remember when I was at Michigan State University, to make some money, I used to work as, there's a third-party vendors that provide services to seniors or any hospitals to patients that don't speak English. So I had an opportunity to translate from Russian, translate from Turkish, from Azerbaijani, even from Spanish. So that is a perfect employment opportunity, and we should be working with communities, with businesses, with medical facilities to contract these positions, to allow, as I said, it's an employment opportunity to allow native speakers to provide the services, to provide the interpretation, translation services to any patient. That's first of all. Second, any medical facility should be employing, and that's not on a professional level. I'm not talking about the medical professionals. I'm talking about the nurses. I'm talking about the front desk that will be able to provide translation to any patient, any incoming patient that unfortunately don't speak English. So that is from economic perspective. We should be working, and I intend to work with the communities, with businesses, with medical facilities pretty closely when I'm in Senate.
Thank you, Ram. Keith, will you share with us your perspective on this?
Well, communication is everything, and it is definitely life critical in the medical profession. I am not currently familiar with what rules or regulations there are on the paperwork, but I don't see in this day and age that there should be any issue if someone comes into a medical facility to just print out the form in their native language. This should be a no-brainer. Actually having a live person to handle translation and guide would be a bit of a challenge. I love Raman's idea. Here's another employment opportunity, just being able to speak multiple languages. And I think that could be taken where perhaps it's centralized, and we've seen the use of teleconferencing and video conferencing. It should be very easy for the front desk person to get on their medical network and bring in a person that could help translate and help guide someone who's not a native English speaker. Frankly, in the medical field, I think a lot of born English speakers have a hard time understanding things, and they might need someone to kind of help translate between the lay person and the medical profession. There should be requirements, and I think that would be all part of the regulation, even just at the state level. It would be easy enough to mandate, and I think we can come up with some really good proactive measures to make sure people are taken care of in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Mo, will you share your vision around this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ron and Keith hit on some really key points here. And I love the idea of what Ron put out there, having employment opportunities based around being able to translate, particularly in the most crucial area of healthcare. Even in the federal level, making sure that we have multiple documents that we can have in different language. You know, this is the melting pot that is America. We can't be so arrogant that we think that everyone speaks English and that we only provide documents or communication in that form. So the more we can do to get funding and to add procedures and structures around making sure that documents are readily available, not even on healthcare, but all aspects of government, to ensure that the people of this country and this state of this in this district have the appropriate ability to understand the communication that's coming through is essential. So I work with the federal government myself to ensure that these policies are being put in place, particularly on the federal level. And if we do that, we'll ensure that we can move forward on these crucial issues.
Thank you, Mo.
Harvey, if I may add to Mo's point, that brought me to a really good point that I personally also, on the federal level, I'll be working with Mo closely we live in the world of technology, as you know, right? So developing technology. So until a person is fluent in English, the state actually should be able to provide a personal, the translation device, an app, right? And again, to Mo's point, I'll be working closely with him to see what is it that can be done on the funding level from the federal level, and working on the state, providing those technologies to people that need them.
Thank you, Ron. Mandy, will you share your perspective?
Thank you, Harvey. Yes, I think that this question has two components to it, because our medical providers can be either publicly funded or private entities. And on the publicly funded side, that's an issue of not necessarily legislative authority, but more regulatory authority. And like our hospitals that are publicly funded must now provide a translator for people who for whom English is not their first language, or who don't understand it. And I know this through my private practice as an attorney, having people come in who don't speak English and who have been to hospitals, and the ones that not all of them actually comply with the regulatory requirements, but those interpreters are not allowed to be, that person's child, because, can you imagine having a child do the interpretation for someone who has a tubal pregnancy, for example, and needs to take methotrexate to deal with with that, so that it doesn't, blow out the fallopian tube. The child is going to have a hard time explaining that to their parent, and could be traumatizing to the child to explain it. we've had a problem sometimes with them asking the children to be the translators in medical situations. And for that reason, the regulations require hospitals to have publicly funded hospitals to have a translator on site or accessible through technological means, so that the translator can explain the medical terminology and situation to the patient. Now, when you're looking at the private marketplace, it's a little different. For example, but there are huge market forces that would compel a business owner in the medical field or in any field at all to have people on staff who can translate and who can make that transition easier for the Hispanic population and for all non-native speakers. For example, our office manager right now is a native Spanish speaker. Our past office manager was a native Spanish speaker, and because of that, we've been able to get more clients from the Hispanic community. My dentist office is pretty much all minority employees, and about half of them are native Spanish speakers. And for that reason, the Hispanic community goes to him to be their dentist because they're more comfortable there. So there are serious market forces that would compel people in the private industry to have those translators and the forms and to make everything much more comfortable and understandable for our Hispanic population. And where we're not dealing with the private industry, we have the regulatory requirements, such as at hospitals, as I described.
Thank you, Mandy. And staying on this topic of language and communication, and this is for Keith, Mandy, and Ram, what are the policies that you feel are needed for the Lancaster schools so that they can be equipped with the translators and the multi-language forms and documents, which are going to be so important for our children to become successful through the process of education? And let's begin with Keith this time.
Okay, thank you for that. I believe there's much that this overlaps with the medical situation. We are talking about infrastructure, organizations designed to serve the entire population of our state. So there is, and as Mandy brought out, when it's something that's being run by the government, then it's pretty easy to make sure, if they aren't in place, the availability of forms and translators. Raman pointed out the technology has many of the answers. I mean, you see advertised all the time a personal translator device that could be just sitting there at the front desk in the ER when there is not the possibility. They're not perfect, but they would certainly help if there is not a real person, live person available, either analog or virtually. So I think we would apply the same solutions, but they should be mandated to be there. And again, it's not even a question of stocking the forms in 16 languages. You just go over and you pull it out of the administrative file system, print it out as you need it. So these things should be available. If they're not, something's really wrong. And again, it goes back to the neglect and the lack of foresight and lack of addressing and just trying to ignore a part of our population, in this case, the Hispanic or any non-native speakers. I mean, I get forms from the government and it'll tell you where you can get, the links for 20 different languages. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have a concise answer on this one from first Mandy and then Ram, because we have a very strong final question that's important for all of us, as this question is as well. Mandy, your thoughts?
Okay. fairly quickly. Within the budget, we fund the ESL programs, but otherwise we don't get involved in the day-to-day operations of local school districts. So this to me would be much more of a local school district question. I reached out to our a member of our local school board to ask, and he said he's not sure that if it is a written policy or not, but that in order for the schools to operate most efficiently and get things done with their significantly large Hispanic population, that they are doing these things, and he just doesn't know if it is a written policy or not. So I assume there are always, as in every situation, there are times when even if it is a written policy, it's not followed. But he assured me that this is definitely on their radar, especially with regard to the Hispanic population, and that the school board and the school district is aware and trying to always address it so that students and their families fully understand what's going on and have effective communication.
Thank you, Mandy. Ram, will you share with us what your perspective is on this issue?
Absolutely. I'll try to keep it brief, as you said. To Mandy's point, that's a perfect the point that she brought up. The ESL as a second language, it should be better funded on the state level. Again, supported by the technologies that provide it. Adult education for ESL must be ramped up. But my intention is also on the state level as a state senator to work with school districts. That's again an opportunity to be provided with the school district to see what is it that can be done on the state level for each school district to provide to work with the staff, to provide the staff that can actually, you see, technology is good, but technology cannot replace a human being. There are emotions involved. There is a certain dialect that involved, and if you have a document that needs to be translated, a several-page document that needs to be translated, there is also a human factor should be taken into consideration, that sometimes technology is not that strong to provide the translation where legal language or medical language is involved in the documentation. So that's where the human power comes into picture, that we've got to have to make sure that that's, again, another opportunity for anybody whose language is other than English, who speaks more than one language, to be employed, right, to provide that opportunity. So I intend to work on a state level as a state senator. I intend to work with school districts about it.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you for that vision. Our last question for today, based on our availability of time, and this is for all four candidates. What regulations should be pursued so that we stop law enforcement officers from asking victims or witnesses about their immigration status? And let's begin with Mo.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. You know, the issue of law enforcement throughout this country is one that is pressing right now. It's a complicated conversation that should be complicated. You know, the relationship between police and law enforcement and that of the community should be that of a collaboration to make sure that everyone is being safe and healthy. The last thing we need is the continuing discrimination of folks because of the color of their skin. And as a Black man myself, you know, I've experienced that on my own. And the notion that you can ask someone, you know, what is your immigration status, is wholly unacceptable. But it happens way too often that causes escalation and causes issues with not only that person and who is legal, and even maybe not even legal, that can go on and cause a ripple effect throughout their whole family because of that traumatic experience that they may encounter. So we got to be conscious of how we are dealing with police reform as a whole. If I'm elected to go to Congress, I think we need to create a bipartisan task force to establish this new best practice, ensure oversight and accountability on a very national level, including not asking for someone's legal status. The task force also should be included by elected officials, officers of the court, community leaders, I think former inmates, activists as well, and any other representation that can help shape the proper practices that is on a national level, that is trickled down, excuse me, that is trickled down to every local level. You know, most law enforcement is on a community by level. Community by community level, and that's understood. But there should be an umbrella of practices that we can all go to and ensure that things are happening the right way. And when officers are not doing this or abusing their power, then they should go into a national database that shows these officers to be exactly that. And so if they do get suspended or fired, then they are forced. Then they go into this base that we know that they're there, and they can't get employment somewhere else if they are misusing their power on a continuous basis. So these are some of my initial thoughts to deal with law enforcement. I got a more extensive version of this, but I think we got to stop it, and look forward to hearing on the local level the thoughts of my, hopefully, the rest of these candidates for their respective offices. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mo. Keith, will you share with us your thoughts on this topic?
Yes, I believe that there should definitely be a decoupling of our local law enforcement from activities, immigration activities, except for, in a specific case of a lawbreaker. That's the only time that I believe there should be any interaction, when a crime's been committed and the criminal is then reported to ICE. But the fact that victims and witnesses think that they are going to be asked their immigration status has a chilling effect on the safety of our communities. They are not going to come forward and help get a crime solved. They are not going to help put a criminal behind bars. So we have got to stop that. This is a function of the federal government. The federal government should be taking care of it. I want our law enforcement people to be enforcing our local laws, building community relationships that can help prevent crimes by neighborhood policing. And these communities are not going to talk to our law enforcement at all until we can restore, or maybe not even a question of restoring, maybe it's just building in the first place between the black and the brown and all the other, ethnicities that are obvious. There's obvious physical differences, and they end up being profiled and asked questions like this. This is totally wrong. Every citizen, let me back up. Every human being in this country needs to be treated with respect. And I too could go on for a long time on this one. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Keith. It's a very important topic for all of us. Mandy, will you share your perspective?
I have a little bit of a nuanced perspective on this. When I read this, it really reminds me of a bill that I have pending regarding sexual assault on college campuses. If you may have read that recently there was a sexual assault on the Furman campus of some Bob Jones students who would not report the sexual assault because they were drinking, and that was something that they knew they would be suspended for. So policies that punish victims and witnesses end up having an effect of discouraging the reporting of crimes. And this is one that clearly, because the question is being asked, it clearly shows that it discourages the reporting of crimes if victims or witnesses are fearful that they will be asked their immigration status or reported for being in violation of that. However, I was talking about this issue with my husband, who is a former prosecutor, and he said, well, sometimes that question is asked, and it's asked out of compassion. When he was a prosecutor, he would sometimes realize that a witness in a case was becoming very reluctant to cooperate, or a victim was becoming very reluctant to cooperate. And then he would ask out of compassion, you know, do you have an issue with your immigration status? And then if, you know, the person responded that they did, then he would find a way around that to find another witness who didn't have that issue, or someone, another way to prosecute the case. And so that is, that's, I think, something that we have to consider if we're talking about doing a blanket prohibition against that. But, you know, when people are being asked their immigration status, they don't know if they can trust the person asking it or not. And I agree with Keith. I don't think that our local law enforcement should be in the business of reporting victims or witnesses to immigration authorities. I don't know that that is happening either. And so I think a lot of times if they are asked that, it may be, as my husband described, as a way to understand the situation and then find a different way to prosecute the case if the witness or victim is fearful and fearful of cooperating.
Thank you, Mandy. Ram, will you share your perspective?
Absolutely. So many good points. Mandy, and Keith, and Mo, we have to build a bridge of trust between residents, individuals, human beings, regardless of the immigration status. Build that bridge between law enforcement and human beings. So, main question here, again, law enforcement is, as Mandy pointed out, is local law enforcement is in no business to ask those type of questions. I remember when, again, going back to the town hall that we had a month ago with the Spanish community, one of the concerns they brought up is how the victims, female victims of the domestic abuse, more often they are scared to file a complaint against their husband or the loved ones, to file a complaint because of fear of their immigration status. So there's an ongoing crime going on in the state because of that. And no wonder that South Carolina is, as I mentioned, 45th in the nation for murder of women by men. So this is completely unacceptable. The question of citizenship, when the crime has been committed, justice should be provided. That's it, period, nothing else. Question of citizenship can be discussed later on if needed. And again, as Keith pointed out, the only time that you can ask about the immigration status if the perpetrator or whoever is arrested, the person who was arrested, will be charged, will be booked. And in fact, when that person is booked, when that person goes through the fingerprint process, immigration status will come up immediately. So you don't even have to ask the question. The main point here is to provide the security, to build the trust between the communities and the local law enforcement. And as a state senator, again, as I stated out back then, I'm stating out right now, I intend to work to provide that awareness and education to the communities, not to be afraid. When the crime is committed, come forward, speak up. Nobody will do anything because of the immigration status. We've got to have to work with the local communities. We've got to have to work with the local law enforcement authorities.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. And thank you in particular to our candidates today who are providing their passion, their time, their energy to help all of us as members of South Carolina achieve a better quality of life. Thank you for watching and thank you for participating. We will be posting and hosting a video of today's session on the Lancaster County Democratic Facebook and YouTube page. Please feel free to share it, watch it, and let your neighbors and friends know about it. Just a reminder for all of us, Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Deadlines to register online in order to vote is Sunday, October 4th. The deadline for registering by mail in order to vote, it must be postmarked by Monday, October 5th. The deadline to register in person to vote is Friday, October 2nd. The deadline to request a ballot by mail must be received by Friday, October 30th. And in-person absentee voting begins on October 5th. Once again, thank you all. Remember to do our civic duty and vote, and get out and share this information with your friends, your family, and your neighbors. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Harvey, Ron, Keith, Mandy.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you all. Thank you.
A pleasure. Thank y'all. Bye-bye.
I think this one went great.